fifth accelerator in the Cotter Change Program is to remove barriers. What remove barriers means is that every obstacle that may prevent progress needs to be removed immediately. And they need to be removed quickly because it's easy to lose momentum, or maybe you prefer the word energy, during the process if obstacles are encountered. And obstacles are critical because every manager who has had experience in a change program knows that people in the organization can often prevent change from happening, and they do prevent change from happening. And because at that point, remember that at least 51% of the people in the organization is necessary to be successful in your change efforts, because people can be one of the major obstacles. The other 49% might be skeptical or suspicious or even cynical when it's important to give them a message that we ask that you don't actively block us trying to make a difference. And please remember, there's no need for you to join us right now. So that's one way to remove that barrier. The sixth accelerator of change is short-term wins. And during any change program, it's important to generate short-term wins all along the way. And the reason that is important is because progress and small successes motivate the team and the army. And the successful completion of smaller actions, when they're combined together, will be essential in successfully reaching the end goal or successful change. Remember though, it is vital to define, achieve, and communicate frequently those short-term wins, because if you don't do that, the commitment for change will begin to decline. The seventh accelerator for successful change, according to Professor Cotter, is sustain acceleration. Sustaining or continuing the change process means that the organization is not just achieving short-term wins, but in fact the organization is making continuous and sustained progress towards the long-term goals of the organization. And this means that the guiding coalition and the volunteer army must stay focused on repeated wins that are bringing them to the success they desire. The last of the Cotter 8 accelerators is to anchor the change. And by anchoring the change, Cotter means that change must in fact become part of the organization's culture. But to make that possible means that continuous efforts have to be made to ensure that change is acceptable in the organization and viewed as an opportunity throughout the organization and not a threat, even in the future. And this is important because having a positive view of change will make any future strategic initiatives easier to achieve and will help you to create a more agile organization. Now, all of this change talk is exciting, but talk and even effort is often not enough, because the critical element in most change programs is based on successful implementation or execution. And there are 4 core principles for successful implementation according to Professor Cotter, and every manager should know those. Those 4 principles are very simple, so beware. Within simplicity is often hidden complexity. The first core principle for successful implementation of change management is management versus leadership. This principle is important to remember during complex change or life-changing situations. During complex or transformational change situations, leadership is needed more than management. And by this, we don't mean more leaders. What it really means is that organizations need to create more moments where all people can demonstrate leadership. Important to remember, The second core principle for successful implementation of change distinguishes between head and heart. Transformational change in organizations must be driven by people's hearts, passions, emotions, and aspirations. And that passion is directed at doing something extraordinary rather than doing it because they're afraid. And Cotter refers to this principle as heads and hearts because it emphasizes the fact that the heart is necessary, but the head still matters. Or in other words, it must be logical and must be rigorous. The third core principle for successful implementation of change recognizes the importance of want versus have to. In simple terms, this means that at least 51% of the people in the organization must want to change. The final core principle for successful implementation of change is few versus many. And this principle recognizes that during this successful change process, a shift must occur from having just a few experts leading the change to activating many throughout the organization. And these principles are important to remember because they will support you in the execution of the 8 change accelerators we discussed in this session. And they will make the greatest difference possible in any change effort you might be involved with as a manager in the future. So remember the principles. Now, wow, once again, that was a lot to take in. So what are the 3 lessons you should leave this session with? The first lesson is that a strategy for change should only be developed after, and I emphasize the word after, urgency for a change has been established and the change team is formed. The second lesson is that many hands make light work, and that means that volunteers are more powerful than people who are only acting out of fear. Not good. And finally, the third lesson is based on the fact that all the planning and communicating, etc. in the world will not help your organization to succeed in change. And this means the third lesson is that change must be driven by people's hearts, passions, emotions, and aspirations to do something extraordinary. But it needs to be logical and rigorous. And your role as a manager is to help release that passion in others. And that, in fact, is one of the greatest challenges of any manager.